Hi, my name is Christiana and I am a master's student studying biological sciences at Florida Atlantic University. I grew up in Babson Park, Florida and was a science educator for almost 5 years. You know, I found out recently that most people can identify hundreds, if not thousands, of corporate logos, but less than 10 species of plants that naturally grow in their local area. So I came up with the idea for 10 on the Ridge to help change that. So keep watching to take a hike with me on Florida's ancient islands, the Lake Wales Ridge, and you'll learn the tools to identify 10 species of plants that naturally grow in this area. I'm here at the Ridge Audubon Center. I'm here at the Scrub Plum Trail. I'm here at the Crooked Lake Prairie. I'm here at the Crooked Lake Sandhill. I'm here at the Lake Wales Ridge State Forest. I'm here at the Tiger Creek Preserve. Did you know that Central Florida is home to one of the highest numbers of rare plants and animals in the United States? The Lake Wales Ridge is a biodiversity hotspot and contains some of the oldest communities found in Florida. Some of the species that live here are endemic and found nowhere else in the entire world. And some of them are so rare that they're even protected by the federal government. What if I told you this ecosystem was sculpted by the sea? But how's that possible if today the ocean is almost 100 miles away from here? Well, Florida hasn't always looked like this. A couple million years ago, what is present-day Babson Park, Lake Wales, Haines City, Sebring, Avon Park, those places were all beachfront property. And most of Florida was underwater. That's why you can find shark's teeth in places like the Peace River. During those time periods, the ocean was much higher than it is today, and Florida was really just a chain of islands with sand dunes on top poking up out of a vast ocean. And on those islands were plants and animals, isolated from their distant relatives. And it's that isolation that led to these organisms evolving some really unique characteristics to survive the harsh conditions. The habitats are relatively dry and almost desert-like, and there are many different plant communities found along the Lake Wales Ridge. But perhaps the most well-known are the scrub and sandhill communities. The palmetto has to be one of the most iconic species found growing in Florida's sandy soils. Now, what's referred to as palmettos is really a few different species. Throughout Florida, we find the sable palmetto, the scrub palmetto, and even a dwarf palmetto. But right now, I'd like to introduce to you the saw palmetto. Saw palmettos grow in a wide variety of communities, including flatwood forests, coastal dunes, and obviously, sand ridges. The saw palmetto gets its name from the 2 rows of sharp teeth along both sides of the petiole. A petiole is the stalk that connects to the base of a leaf. Depending on the conditions, sometimes saw palmettos have trunks that extend up into the air, while other times the trunks may lie on the soil surface or even remain underground. They often grow 5 to 10 feet tall and in clumps 20 feet or more across. They're really important to the animals that live here. Their berries are an important food source for black bears, white-tailed deer, wild turkeys, gopher tortoises, and birds. Their flowers are also important for many pollinators, and clumps of palmetto are often favorite hiding places of rattlesnakes, wasps, and the Florida panther. Here's where it gets really interesting. If you had to guess, how old do you think this saw palmetto is and ones like it? Would you say 10 years? 100 years? 1,000? What about 10,000 years old? Sounds impossible, right? So check this out. They don't have growth rings like trees. This makes it extremely challenging to determine their age. So there's a research associate at Archbold Biological Station, Dr. Warren Abrahamson, and he developed a method for establishing the age of saw palmettos. Measurements found the growth rate to be only 0.24 to 0.86 inches per year. If you're following me, that's well under just 1 inch per year. Using genetic analysis, modeling, mapping techniques, and an understanding of how these colonies grow, the data revealed the estimated ages ranging from approximately 1,000 to 5,000 years old. But they realized that this is probably a conservative estimate because it used an average growth rate and didn't account for the individuals that have a much slower growth rate. So for those individuals, they are likely much older than that average age they found. So Dr. Abrahamson suspects that there are 10,000-year-old saw palmetto clones growing on the Lake Wales Ridge. Next we have the sable palmetto, also known as the cabbage palmetto and the sable palm. The sable palmetto is the most widely distributed palm in Florida. It's not a true tree and is more closely related to grasses. It's commonly found throughout Florida's flatwoods, hammocks, swamps, and river floodplains. They are capable of growing 90 feet or more in some areas, but are usually seen at 40 to 50 feet. It has a rough, fibrous trunk that is about 10 to 16 inches in diameter. It is topped with a full, round crown of curved, fan-shaped palm leaves with blades that are 3 to 4 feet long and petioles, remember those are the leaf stalks, that are 3 to 6 feet long. After fronds die and fall off, the frond bases, known as boots, form a spiked crisscross pattern on the trunk. As a sable palm grows and ages, its appearance changes. Young sable palms often have prominent boots on their trunk, whereas old sable palms lose their boots to reveal a smooth gray bark. It often hosts other plants in its boots, including a variety of beautiful, threatened, and endangered ferns. The sable palm also shelters and supplies nesting material to many birds, snakes, squirrels, tree frogs, lizards, and a variety of insects. Dead palm fronds serve as roosting habitat for certain species of bats. They bloom during the late spring months. They produce a branched cluster of blooms that extend beyond the leaves in the canopy and contain thousands of tiny, white, fragrant flowers that attract pollinators. After flowering, the small fruits appear in the summer and are about a 1/4 inch in diameter. They are a crucial food source for resident and migrating birds and small animals that disperse the seeds. These plants take about 10 to 15 years or more to develop from a seed to the first sign of a trunk at ground level. Thereafter, trunks will grow about 6 inches per year. This means that a sable palm with 20 feet of trunk is at least 50 years old. It's relatively common to see sable palmettos that are 30 or 40 feet tall, or 70 to 95 years old. Seminole and Miccosukee natives refer to the sable palm as the tree of life, for it has provided them shelter, food, tools, utensils, and fiber for baskets and netting. Florida designated the sable palmetto as the state tree in 1953, and it occurs on the Florida state seal and the state flag. Third on the list is the longleaf pine. The longleaf pine is often found adjacent to the scrub in flatwoods and sandhills. Depending on the soil, they can grow 60 feet to over 100 feet in height and 3 feet in diameter. The needle-like leaves, which come in bundles of 3, occasionally 4, grow up to 18 inches long and occur at the ends of stout branches in dense ball-like tufts. These slow-growing trees live for over 300 years, and they may take up to half of that time to reach their full size. Longleaf pine seeds develop in cones and are dispersed by the wind. When they fall to the ground, they must come in contact with soil to germinate. Historically, leaf litter and debris were cleared away by forest fires that were sparked during lightning storms. When fire is suppressed, ground cover builds up and prevents seeds from reaching the soil. The seeds that are able to take root undergo an interesting life cycle that differs from many other conifers. Rather than spending its first few years growing in height, the longleaf pine goes through a grass stage. During the grass stage, it appears to be just a large clump of needles that grows very little. During this stage, it starts to develop a taproot, which will be up to 12 feet long at maturity. After going through the grass stage, longleaf pines begin to grow in height. Both mature trees and grass stage longleafs are fire resistant. Fire plays a major role in the development of this community and is essential to the survival of certain wildlife species, such as the endangered red-cockaded woodpecker. Many other native animals are found in these ecosystems, such as gopher tortoises, Florida mice, gopher frogs, wild turkeys, and the threatened indigo snake. While the longleaf pine once covered 30 to 60 million acres of the southern United States, 200 years of logging and land clearing have greatly reduced this range. However, efforts are being made to restore the longleaf pine ecosystems within their natural range. Next up is the sand pine, also known as the scrub pine. As the name suggests, the sand pine is best suited for areas that are well drained and sandy. The most common way to describe a sand pine is that it resembles a Christmas tree. One of the best ways to distinguish it from other pine species is by the needles, which are very short, only 2 to 3 inches. They have an extensive fibrous root system that helps to stabilize soils and prevent erosion. They can grow up to 100 feet in height, but are more often seen 15 to 40 feet tall. The cones are small, and there are usually branches running all the way up the tree. Many of the cones remain closed until heated by fire. After a fire, the cones open up and their seeds fall onto the newly bare soil and sprout in great numbers. More than 20 threatened or endangered species of wildlife live in or utilize sand pine forests, including Florida scrub jays that sometimes nest in the branches. The heavily branched trees provide cover and nesting sites for many songbirds, woodpeckers, and squirrels. Birds of prey often perch in the trees to watch for small mammals and rodents that often feed on the seeds. Fifth on our list is the common yucca, also known as Adam's needle. The common yucca is a member of the Agaveaceae family, which includes other well-known arid-loving plants such as the agave and the Joshua tree. It is a shorter yucca plant than many other species and tends to grow no taller than 3 feet. This native is highly drought and salt tolerant and prefers full sun to part shade. The common yucca can be found growing naturally in Florida scrub and scrubby flatwoods. It's a stemless, slow-growing, flowering plant with sharp, sword-shaped leaves. It can be easily distinguished from other yucca species by the white, thready filaments along the leaf margins, hence the scientific name Yucca filamentosa. In the early summer, a 6-foot flowering stalk rises up to bear masses of cream-colored flowers for several weeks. It provides food and cover for wildlife and serves as a larval host to 2 species of butterflies, the yucca giant skipper and the Coffea giant skipper. They are pollinated by the yucca moth, while other moth species use this yucca as a host plant to lay their eggs. Yuccas have a mutualistic symbiotic relationship with the small white yucca moths. The moths actively pollinate the yucca, and the yucca serves as a food source and a place for them to lay their eggs. They are most easily identified by their presence within the yucca flowers, and they even have specialized mouth parts with which they actively pollinate their host species. Number 6 is sky blue lupin. Sky blue lupin is arguably one of Florida's most beautiful wildflowers. This common name, sky blue lupin, actually includes different species. The species Lupinus cumulicola small is only found in Florida and is considered an endemic species, whereas Lupinus diffusus is found throughout multiple states in the southeastern United States. Sky blue lupin occurs naturally in sand and oak scrub, coastal strands, sandhills, and pine flatwoods. It is known to be extremely sensitive to growing conditions, and its distribution is restricted only to areas with the proper soils and ample light. It also responds quickly to soil disturbances and prescribed fire. Its seeds can lie dormant for years waiting to germinate. Sky blue lupin is a very short-lived perennial that spends its first year growing, putting out only leaves. The second year, it continues to grow, but puts out a few flower spikes. By the third year, it explodes with stunning bluish-purple flowers. In Florida, the sky blue lupin blooms from late winter to early spring. Sky blue lupin can grow to as much as 3.5 feet tall and spread just as wide. It's shrubby with multiple stems and leaves that provide great hiding places for many small animals. Its leaves are covered in many fine silvery white hairs, which give them an almost metallic look and makes them soft to the touch. Next, we have the prickly pear cactus. The presence of cactus reminds us that the scrub community is very desert-like. The sandy soil communities allow rainwater to seep deep down into the Floridan aquifer. These communities are considered one of the primary recharge areas for our aquifer. Although Central Florida's scrub receives on average 50 inches of rain every year, the sandy, well-drained soil led to plants evolving special strategies for efficiently taking up and keeping moisture. Some plants in the scrub hold on to their moisture by having small or rolled leaves. Some plants have little hairs on the underside of their leaves that capture moisture, and others, like the prickly pear cactus, have spines. Spines help cacti thrive in their environment by providing multiple functions. They protect the plant from predators, provide shade, help regulate temperature, reduce water loss, and even help the plant to spread and reproduce. Also found on their large pads are small, sharp glochids, which are little hair-like bristles. This cactus occurs in most open habitats on the Lake Wales Ridge. The cactus's bright yellow flowers appear in late spring and produce large amounts of pollen that are an important food source for bees and other pollinators. Young cactus pads are eaten by gopher tortoises, while the fleshy fruits and seeds are eaten by birds and small mammals. Older cactus pads are often spotted with white, furry-looking blobs, which are cochineal scaled insects. These insects produce a bright red pigment on their bodies, which was used as a dye by the natives of Mexico and South America before the arrival of the Spaniards. This dye became a major item of international commerce. Cochineal dye is still occasionally used today, but it has been largely replaced by other dyes. Number 8 on the list is Garbaria. Garbaria is an endemic species, which means it's only found in one region on Earth. This species is only found in Florida's North and Central Peninsula and occurs naturally in sandhills, open areas in xeric or dry hammocks, scrubby sandhill, and scrubby flatwoods. Garbaria is a long-lived perennial shrub that reaches a height of 4 to 8 feet. Its foliage has a distinctive dull grayish-green color. Its leaves are described as oval to obovate or egg-shaped with the narrower end at the base. If you look closely at the leaves, they don't appear flat like many other leaves, but instead have three-dimensionality, whose margins undulate. Or another way to say it is that the edge of the leaves look wavy. The clusters of small pink to violet flowers that seem to cover the plant appear from late summer into early winter, but have been known to flower sparsely throughout the year. Its numerous flowers are an excellent source of nectar for many butterflies, moths, bees, and other insects. Garbaria is listed as a state-threatened species due to habitat loss. This means that we've seen a rapid decline in the number of plants within the state, but it's not so much to consider them endangered. The scientific name is Garbaria heterophylla. The genus name Garbaria honors the American botanist Abraham Garber, who lived from 1838 to 1881. Over the years, he spent many winters in Florida, where he discovered and documented many new plant species. The species name Heterophylla is from the Greek word hetero, which means diverse, and phylon, which means leaf. Ninth on our list is the scrub oak. Florida scrubs are typically dominated by one or more of 4 oak species. These oaks are not trees, but shrubs, rarely exceeding 8 feet in height. Structurally, these scrub oak species look similar, but can be identified by their leaves. Sand live oak has thick, oblong, evergreen leaves about 2 to 3 inches long, with curled under edges and little hairs underneath. Myrtle oak has small, shiny, rounded evergreen leaves about 2 inches long that have no hairs underneath. The Chapman oak has larger leaves with various irregular shapes and irregular hairs underneath. These 3 oak species are found in nearly all Florida scrubs. A 4th species, the Inapina oak, sometimes called the Archbold oak, because it was discovered to be a distinct species through the work done at Archbold Biological Station. It's another endemic species to Florida and occurs in scrubs in Central Florida only. The leaves of the Inapina oak are curled, directed upward, and tend to be a bit larger than the myrtle oak leaves. Periodically, these bushy oaks are burned to the ground during natural or prescribed fire, only to re-sprout from their massive underground root systems. The longer a scrub goes without burning, the larger the scrub oaks become. And if a scrub is prevented from burning for more than 40 to 70 years, these scrub oaks, especially the sand live oak, will become small trees. The acorns of these scrub oaks supply food for scrub jays, which is another Florida endemic species, and many other animals as well. For number 10, we have the turkey oak. The turkey oak is technically another scrub oak within the same genus as the previous 4, but this species is likely the easiest to identify. It's found throughout Florida in the scrub and sandhill communities. It grows on well-drained, sandy soils and is commonly associated with the longleaf pine. Its range extends beyond Florida These trees can be found from Virginia and west to southeastern Louisiana. It received its common name from the shape of its leaves, which resemble a turkey's foot. Turkey oak flowers bloom in November. Their smooth leaves usually have 3 to 7 narrow lobes, a small point at the tip, and can grow from 3 to 12 inches long. The leaves vary in color, from orange to red during the autumn. It has a relatively sparse crown when compared to many other oaks, but it's nonetheless a valuable tree. Turkey oak acorns are an important food source for many animals, including the black bear, white-tailed deer, and wild turkey, while other birds commonly use turkey oaks for nesting and perching. The turkey oak is a moderately fast to fast-growing tree with a relatively short lifespan. They typically grow about 40 feet, but can reach heights up to 70 feet. The largest turkey oak on record, growing near Brantford, Florida, measured 83 feet in height. You may be wondering if plants really matter, or why it's important to preserve natural areas and save species in the first place. Our planet now faces a global extinction crisis never witnessed by humankind. Scientists predict that humans have increased the extinction rate of native species anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times the natural rate, and that there's more than 1 million species on track for extinction in the coming decades. But there's still time to halt this crisis, and it all starts with us, and you taking the time to learn 10 native plant species that live on the Lake Wales Ridge is an awesome place to start. A compelling reason to save plant species is their medicinal and agricultural value. Most plant species have not yet been tested for their potential benefits to humans. An estimated 40 to 50% of all prescriptions in the United States are derived from plants. Medications originating from wild species include aspirin for pain relief from the willow tree, penicillin for antibiotics from fungus, and quinine extracted from the bark of the South American cinchona tree, which relieves malaria. Today we know that a successful society is supported by a healthy economy, environment, and community. The long-term conservation of the Lake Wales Ridge will succeed only with the support of people who live and work in the area. Economic development is important, but inappropriate development poses a serious threat to the environment and stability of the community. Natural areas influence a community's self-image and pride. Protected natural areas have become centers for community and sites for environmental education, giving the community a sense of history and place. The economic value of environmental land grows over time. Protected conservation areas, in many cases, increase the adjacent property values. Some species are keystone species that support entire ecosystems. Take, for instance, the gopher tortoise. The gopher tortoise's burrow and mound have been documented to provide shelter for more than 360 different species of wild creatures. If the gopher tortoise disappears, then the web of life begins to unravel. Does it make sense to lose now something that may one day prove vitally important? After all, extinction is forever. Many also believe that as responsible stewards of the land, it's our duty to save species that took hundreds, thousands, and millions of years to evolve. We have a responsibility to preserve natural spaces for future generations. A Native American saying advises us to consider the impacts of our decisions today for 7 generations in the future. Ensuring that future generations inherit a diverse, healthy, beautiful land is a legacy worth striving for.